If you're looking for a natural boost to your mood, clearer skin, and even relief from menopause symptoms, you'll want to stick around because we're exploring a powerful herb, St. John's wort. In this video, I'll explain how this simple flower works, the best natural sources, and important considerations before trying it. And if you're new here, I'm Dr. Gayla Gorman, a licensed acupuncturist, naturopath, and author of What's Your Kryptonite? On this channel, I'm here to help you reverse the effects of chronic stress so that you can cruise through midlife and beyond symptom-free, so that you can put an end to common midlife symptoms like chronic fatigue, insomnia, mood swings, issues with gut health, and even weight gain. So, the way St. John's works in the body is by meeting receptors and essentially stimulating the production of serotonin. And so serotonin is directly linked to depression. If you are not making enough serotonin, then you may feel a little blue. And if it's really severe, you may actually be clinically depressed. Actually, the production of serotonin starts in the gut. So it's really important to also consider gut health if you feel like you may have an issue with serotonin production. Anything you can do to improve that, that's kind of a topic for a different video, but just know that serotonin is the neurotransmitter that's directly related to our mood. The other thing that St. John's wort is correlated with, tied to, is dopamine production. And so dopamine is basically that feeling of really being satisfied, the feeling of being happy and receiving some reward. So you might think of it like when you get a hit of sugar from eating a dessert that you really love, or one of the most common ways now is some of the games the younger people play on the computer. The video games are big dopamine donors. And so the risk with this, dopamine is the thing that leads to addiction. If we get really just addicted to those dopamine hits, then whatever has created that dopamine hit is likely to become something that we really crave. St. John's wort is a fairly easy and neutral way to increase this dopamine without creating unhealthy dependency. Also of interest is that St. John's wort can be used topically. I think it is used most commonly with some sort of skin trauma. And it makes sense, right? Because if it is helping to regulate serotonin and dopamine, it's probably also affecting endorphins to some degree, and that can really offset the effects of post-traumatic stress disorder. Using St. John's wort topically, if you've got some sort of skin condition, can be really helpful. So if you'd like to use St. John's wort, where to get your hands on it? St. John's wort is a little yellow flower that's kind of star-shaped, and it's found quite commonly in Europe. But fascinatingly enough, they've found that it is a really powerful herbal, and it's prohibited in France because it interacts with medication. So just know, if you're considering using St. John's wort, this is not something to use lightly without careful consideration. You're going to consume it typically in tea, possibly in tincture or capsule form, but you really need to regulate the dose, however that's easiest for you. If you think you just need a bit, then tea is going to work best. If you really want to control the dose, then tincture is the easiest way to do that. And then if you really just can't handle the nasty taste of some of these liquid herbs, you can try the capsules as well. They're a little bit harder to regulate the dose. And some people honestly find it easier to take the tincture rather than the capsules because they don't like swallowing things. But St. John's wort is a very powerful supplement, and understanding how it works in your body is fascinating, but knowing its benefits and potential cautions is even more important. So before you dive in, there are some things you need to be aware of to avoid creating additional stress. We're going to talk about that in a moment, but this is just an example of one of the countless ways stress creates symptoms and other health issues, especially during midlife. I created a video that shows you how to eliminate these symptoms naturally, so I'll make sure to link to it below this video. But make sure you hit subscribe too, because I share a lot of tips when it comes to dealing with stress that's become toxic. Relieving the nasty symptoms stress creates makes cruising through midlife a breeze. So I promised you I was going to talk to you about some additional benefits of supplementing with St. John's wort. And as you might imagine, because of all these neurotransmitters that it is promoting production of, it's really going to contribute to what I refer to as a happy brain. And a happy brain tends to lead to a happy person. So we don't want to overdo it. Again, we don't want to supplement long term with something that we really don't need. We should be producing these neurotransmitters naturally. But if you've just found yourself really struggling with some of the issues that I've talked about here, then supplementing with St. John's wort could be really helpful. If you've got skin issues, including those skin issues that are related to the immune system dysregulation, like eczema, for example, St. John's wort can be really helpful used topically. And so again, if you've got a tincture, you could even put a few drops in a cream and apply that topically. And many of us, as we go through menopause, really struggle with some of the mood dysregulation. In many cases, it is related to hormone disruption, but those hormones also contribute to our neurotransmitter productions. This can create some relief around menopause, and again, as a short-term solution to use during those periods of time when you're really struggling. So what are some of the cautions to consider if you are really strongly thinking about supplementing with St. John's wort? Well, first, I caution this with just about everything, an interaction with medications. In this particular case, it's even riskier because if you're using any sort of medication for depression, it is interfering with the medication's efficacy in meeting those receptors. And so St. John's wort honestly is used by many people as an alternative to going on the SSRIs or some of the medication for mood regulation. I do believe St. John's wort would be a better alternative, but you also want to make sure that you're addressing what I referred to earlier, and that is your gut health issues, because serotonin production begins in the gut, and that's where you need to start to basically address your symptoms naturally. We want to get to the root cause of the problem, right? We don't just want to suppress a symptom with a natural remedy. If you're sensitive to sunlight, this is also an indication that St. John's wort may not be the best option for you. This is just one of those things that's related to the neurotransmitters, to your hormone regulation. And so if you're already sensitive to sunlight, that is an indication that you've got some dysregulation going on, and you may not want to introduce something that would particularly create even more dysregulation. And so, there definitely are some considerations. St. John's wort is a very powerful supplement. Country would not ban it if they had not found that it was really a powerful remedy, and you want to proceed with caution if you think St. John's wort is something that would be of help to you based on what you've got going on. And if your best efforts to live a healthy lifestyle and do all the things you've been led to think are supposed to work aren't getting the job done, you may even be feeling like you take 2 steps forward and 3 back. In my next video, I'll show you how to manage the toxic stress that's sabotaging your efforts. You can eliminate the symptoms that seem to be piling up in midlife naturally without medication, crazy diets, intense exercise, or any other unsustainable lifestyle hack.